Well, that was a bit disappointing, wasn't it? What's going on, guys? Tyree the Tech Geek here, back again with the best in tech news and tech products. And it turns out this is my first news video. I've been doing this shit for 2 years, and this is my first news video. I guess I'm finally not a fraud. Today, Apple had their latest keynote event, probably the first of about 4 this year that Apple's going to do, called Peak Performance. Peak Performance not only being the title of Apple's latest keynote, but it's also the title of my sex tape. Like I said previously, this was Apple's first keynote of the year, and it was all about prioritizing product efficiency and colors. So the Peak Performance keynote was comprised of unveiling about 5 different products: an iPhone 13, iPhone SE, a brand new iPad Air, and the brand new combination studio workshop of the Mac Studio and the Studio display. First off, Tim Cook came up to the stage and unveiled the brand new iPhone 13 and 13 Pros. Really nothing different about them, just this new colorway, this all new Alpine Green colorway that Tim Cook unveiled today. If you know anything about the iPhone 13 and 13 Pro, there's literally nothing different here, just copied and pasted into a different colored shell. Nothing really new here that we haven't seen on the previous models of the iPhone 13 and 13 Pro. Honestly, I had seen this phone coming over the last couple of months, thanks to the leaks by John Prosser over the last couple of months and Mac rumors and stuff like that. But I was kind of envisioning like a more vibrant green, kind of like the iPhone 12 in purple that we got last year. Not this forest floor, mountainous, alpine green color that looks like Tim Cook got really into camo during the design phase of this phone. Pre-orders are gonna go on sale this Friday, March 11th, and then orders will start shipping out and be available to the general public on March 18th. Prices are going to remain the same. iPhone 13 is going to start at $800. iPhone 13 Pro is going to start at $1,000. Nothing really new here. Next up, Apple unveiled the brand new iPhone SE, the iPhone SE 3. Again, nothing really different with the design, but everything, as with most of the stuff that we saw today, all of the changes and all of the upgrades were internal into this shell. iPhone SE 3 is going to be compacting the A15 Bionic chip, which is the same chip that powers every iPhone in the iPhone 13 lineup. So if you use any of those phones and you see the power efficiency and the power consumption in those chips, but you also see how efficient they are, how fast they are, how snappy they are, that's what you're going to be getting in a much smaller form factor compared to the iPhone 13s. I do respect Apple for taking such a power efficient chip and putting it in a smaller form factor for people, especially for those who are kind of new to iPhones but still want the greatest chip that they have to offer. Like Tim Cook said today, they actually bring in new iPhone users with the iPhone SE more often than not, and then they end up upgrading to something else. Same screen size that we've seen with the previous iPhone SE, 4.7 inches, same 12 megapixel rear facing camera, same 7 megapixel front facing camera, same body of the iPhone 8 and iPhone SE 2, so nothing really new there, and the same exact colors in red, white, and this new midnight shade that Apple is obsessed with pushing on everybody. But another main difference is that this phone is going to be getting 5G as opposed to the iPhone SE 2020 that came out 2 years ago that didn't have 5G for some reason. So that's going to be a great thing to give people who don't want to pay upwards of $700 for a 5G device on Apple, but still want to have that 5G connectivity to use. So that'll be really great for everybody. This iPhone is going to start at $429, so only a $30 increase from the previous iPhone SE, which is really admirable for Apple. I actually really respect that. Again, those pre-orders are going to go on sale this Friday, March 11th, and will be available to the general public on March 18th. Next, Apple updated the iPad Air. Instead of coming with the A14 Bionic chip that it came with last year, it's going to be coming with the M1 chip that currently comes inside of the base MacBook Pro, MacBook Air, and the iPad Pro lineup that Apple has. So if you were using a previous iPad Air, you're going to see significant jumps in CPU, GPU, and processing speeds, especially if you're doing things with photo editing and video editing. Kind of wish they would have added Final Cut Pro to the iPad Air, or even the iPad Pro anyway, especially if you're going to put an M1 chip inside of it. You already have an M1 chip inside of virtually every other Mac that Apple has. And if you're marketing these tools as video and editing tools, a lot of people use other video editing software, especially Apple users. They're going to use Final Cut Pro They're not just going to use iMovie like Apple tended to market in this keynote, but that M1 chip is going to add a lot of processing power to the iPad Air if you don't want to pay the iPad Pro or MacBook Pro money. So good on Apple for putting that into one of their more, let's say, modestly priced iPads. 5G is also coming to the iPad Air, so that's great as well. So if you're looking for an iPad Air to take on the go with you, you can now get the best cellular connectivity that's available on the market right now, along with the other iPads that Apple offers. So there's going to be a Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and cellular model, which now comes with 5G, which is going to be great because now you get the 5G connectivity for a little bit less at the price. Apple made a big deal about the increased data transfer speeds with the new USB-C port on the brand new iPad Air. So you're going to get 2 times data transfer speeds when transferring files to and from the brand new iPad Air. So that's going to be good if you're going to be using the iPad Air as a sort of more modestly priced file conduit if you're using it for editing video or editing photos. Brand new iPad Air is going to come in 5 different colors: midnight, starlight, really wish they would get rid of those stupid colors, pink, purple, and this new sort of aquamarine blue that they're releasing. I kind of like that. That would be my favorite one if I was getting the iPad Air. Data configurations are 64 and 256 gigabytes, which I don't really know why Apple is releasing a 64 gigabyte iPad nowadays. 64 gigabytes really isn't going to cut it in a lot of technology nowadays, so I really don't know why Apple didn't start with a base of 128 gigabytes and then a second option of 256. But you know, I'm not a billion-dollar company. I just buy things that make this company a billion-dollar company. So what do I know? Prices for the 64 gigabyte variant are going to start at $599 and go up to $749 for the 256 gigabyte model. And those prices remain the same for the cellular model as well. So good on Apple for that as well. All right. Now we've got to talk about the big boys of this keynote. So the 2 big stars of this keynote were the unveiling of the brand new Mac Studio and the Mac Studio display. So we're going to start with the Mac Studio first, and the best way I can describe the Mac Studio is a Mac Mini saying, the steroids, just shoot me with gamma rays. This thing is so powerful and so power efficient, it almost defies comprehension. 7.7 inches wide, 3.7 inches tall. The MacBook Studio packs a ridiculously efficient and overpowered intercooling system, which is going to reduce any sort of power consumptions or sounds made from power consumption from intensive things like video or photo editing to literal whispers. It's going to be ridiculous if you're using this device or using this power-hungry device for hours on end to record, to edit videos and photos, especially in a studio setting where you're going to need to kind of keep things quiet. So that's going to be really, really great for studios who do a lot of video and photo editing, or even just a person who wants the absolute best that Apple has to offer for photo and video editing. On the back, from left to right, the Mac Studio will come with 4 Thunderbolt USB-C ports, a 10 gigabit Ethernet port, 2 USB-A ports, an HDMI port, and a Pro audio jack for more lossless audio, especially if you want to connect a amplifier to it. On the front, the Mac Studio is going to come with 2 USB-C ports capable of 40 gigabits data transfer speeds, along with an SD card. The Mac Studio is going to come in 2 different variants. The first one's going to be the M1 Max variant, and then the second one's going to be the M1 Ultra variant. And I'm going to go into M1 Ultra a little bit later in this video. The M1 Max is going to come with 64 gigabytes of RAM. The M1 Ultra is going to come with 128 gigabytes of RAM. So these Mac Studios were billed and marketed by Apple as more powerful than Apple's latest Mac Pros and iMacs, which are absolutely ridiculous. I have some of the specs here that Apple is giving. I kind of wish they would give us those speeds. Like, I actually wish they would give us those benchmarks so we can actually see what the hell they're talking about, where they're getting these figures from, like 3.4 and 2.7 and stuff like that. But you know, Apple's marketing their own stuff. You're going to compare it to Apple's own stuff because more than likely you're coming from Apple's own stuff, so it makes sense. So any person using the Mac Studio is going to have a more than adequate setup, especially when used along with the Studio display. A fine-tuned 27-inch multi-angleable thin, made up of all aluminum desktop display. Honestly, looking at the Keynote, this display looks incredibly beautiful. Made up of 14.7 million megapixels, which means this display is capable of 5K Retina display with True Tone. Even though it's just a display, the Studio display is going to come packing an A13 Bionic chip, which is going to allow it to support center stage with its 12 megapixel camera. Apple loves using 12 megapixel cameras on literally everything. It has a 3 microphone and 6 speaker array, which allows it to support spatial audio. It also has 4 ports on the display, 3 USB-C ports, which we're going to allow for 10 megabit data speeds, and 1 USB-C Thunderbolt port, which is going to allow for connectivity with other displays and for charging a MacBook Pro up to 96 watts. That's already ridiculous that a whole display can power a MacBook Pro on its own. So Apple is getting a little bit out of hand with all these specs here. Now, regarding this new chip that I've mentioned about once or twice in this video, going back to the Mac Studio, the M1 Ultra chip. Apple literally put on their Dr. Frankenstein hat here with this one. They literally took 2 M1 Max chips and fused them together at the spine. What it's going to do is that it's going to double the processing power and speed that the M1 Max chip already had, and octuples the speed and power of the original M1 chip. So imagine that power inside of a Mac Studio. It's going to be ridiculous, guys. The Mac Studio M1 Max variant with 64 gigabytes of RAM is going to start at $2,000. Don't whip out your debit card just yet, guys. The Mac Studio M1 Ultra variant is going to start at $4,000. Great, I love feeling more poor than I already am. And the Studio display is going to start at $1,599, guys. So this Keynote was really aimed towards power users, towards content creators, towards people who work in a studio creating content, whether it be videos or photos, anything involving multimedia. Of course, most of these products won't apply to me because I'm literally editing in my apartment. But of all the devices that were unveiled today, I can honestly say the one that I am most enthused about, even though I'm probably not going to be able to afford it, not even probably, I'm not spending $2,000 on a device, is the Mac Studio, because I actually edit on an M1 Mac Mini. So that sort of power potential in that small of a size, I'm actually really impressed and I'm really intrigued as to whether or not Apple's going to release an updated Mac Mini later on this year, or the Mac Studio is going to sort of take that spot for the Mac Mini going forward. Probably not, because you need a Mac Mini that's going to appeal to content creators or users that are lower down on the power consumption card, like people who don't work in studios or people who don't need that much power for what they're trying to do, which applies to someone like me. My Mac Mini was only about $550 and it works like a dream. I don't hear anything and it doesn't really use up that much power when I'm video editing. So I don't think the Mac Studio is going to take that spot for the Mac Mini, but I am looking forward to the improvements that Apple's going to make to the next Mac Mini, especially with the unveiling of the M1 Ultra chip. If they release a Mac Mini with the M1 Ultra chip, I may have to shell out some money for that one. But all in all, I feel like depending on your skill level, I feel like Apple has a device for everyone in their lineup across all their MacBooks, their iMacs, their Mac Pros, and their Mac Minis. I really feel like Apple has some sort of device for everyone's skill set and skill level, and their wallet. Other than that, guys, that was a recap of Apple's latest Keynote, the Peak Performance event, where they unveiled the brand new colors for the iPhone 13 and 13 Pro, a brand new iPhone SE, a upgraded iPad Air, and the brand new additions, the Studio display and the Mac Studio. Other than that, guys, if you liked the video, share the video and subscribe. This has been Ty the Techie, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.